My name is Ella. I met my husband Charles, who works at a trading company, during our university days, and after dating for about 4 years, we got married last year. Unlike me, who's from the countryside and has been living alone since university, Charles is the eldest son, sandwiched between a sister and a brother, and lived at his in-laws' house until we got married. As a result, when we got married, we built a new, completely separate 2-family house on the property of the in-laws' house. But my husband's unfamiliarity with household chores means his share is inevitably less. However, my mother-in-law, Layla, doesn't seem to be pleased with this. Really, why on earth did Charles marry someone like you, lazing around, unemployed at home, and not doing household chores properly, yet having the nerve to make Charles help with them? Excuse me, Layla, but I also work. That's not true. I saw you chatting with some friends on your computer. That was not chatting. I was conducting a remote lecture. It's part of my job. Oh yes, play dumb with me. Use big words to make it sound convincing, thinking I'll fall for it. That's not... And a job you can do at home is basically just a side job. You're not earning much, yet you strut around as if you're working equally. How brazen to burden Charles with household chores. If you don't believe me, please ask Michael, my brother-in-law. The high school where he teaches is affiliated with the university where I teach. Bringing up those men in our family who are blinded by your outward charm doesn't lend you any credibility. No matter what I say, my mother-in-law won't listen. Moreover, my sister-in-law, Aurora, who returned home after cheating and getting divorced, along with my mother-in-law, are like 2 peas in a pod. But my father-in-law, who doesn't approve of my sister-in-law's lifestyle, once scolded her, using me as an example. Can't you be more responsible? Look at Ella, younger than you, yet balancing work and household chores. Aren't you ashamed? Thankfully, my brother-in-law Michael, a responsible high school teacher, often reprimands my sister-in-law and mother-in-law, and even told my father-in-law it's wrong to use Ella to scold my sister. However, my husband Charles, who has never stood up to my sister-in-law or mother-in-law, just escapes the situation saying, "Please handle it somehow." I hate to say this, but I'm really troubled by Layla and Aurora. I'm sorry for the trouble, but they don't mean any harm. They just take advantage because we're family. But they enter our section without permission, play DVDs at high volume, and disturb my remote lectures, don't they? Even if we're family, isn't it common sense to have manners? Well, maybe Mom can't fully understand your job because of her age. And what about Aurora entering when I'm not around? Does she think she has the right to take anything as long as she leaves a note saying I'll borrow this? She's unemployed and struggling with alimony payments from her divorce. Maybe she didn't want to feel embarrassed in front of her friends. Oh, really? But the sizes are too different for her to wear my clothes, aren't they? Well... And the other day, Michael told me that Aurora shared on Twitter items for sale on a flea market app, which were all my things. Isn't that theft? Borrowing without asking and then selling them? That's an exaggeration. It must be a mistake or a misunderstanding. Even now, you still defend Aurora and Layla. Eventually, thanks to Michael telling my father-in-law, my sister-in-law had to pay me an equivalent amount to replace the things she sold without my permission. But even then, my sister-in-law and mother-in-law grumbled in the background. The items were old, and the sale price wasn't much, yet we have to pay for brand new items for that arrogant wife of my brother. Really, she got angry just because we borrowed her room to watch an Idol DVD. Michael told me this when he came over for dinner after work. You might not want to hear this, but maybe you should consider whether you can really spend your life with my brother. He won't confront Mom or Aurora. Yeah, but apart from Layla or Aurora, Charles isn't a bad person, just weak. That's not weakness. He just wants to protect himself. He doesn't want to confront Mom or Aurora himself. He might be so, but... And he may not be a bad person, but he's not a good one either. You married into the family, moved to a new place, and live with these in-laws even though it's in a separate household. That was your agreement, right? It was, but... What about Charles in comparison? He's lived in a familiar place since birth, with friends and everything nearby. Isn't it natural for him to take care of Ella, who has no one else to rely on? Yet he's just shirking his responsibilities. But you know I've always been at odds with Mom and Aurora. And Charles is just an opportunist, so I've always felt isolated at home. Dad supported me, but he's often away for work. So when Ella became my sister-in-law and actually listened and advised me, I was really happy. I've come to think of you as more than a real sister. I feel the same. You're like a real brother to me. That's why I want you to be happy. If I were your real brother, I would definitely tell you to leave him. Michael's straightforward words cleared the fog in my mind about the situation that I had been vaguely ignoring. Right then, I received an offer for a business trip to Europe. Normally, I would have declined such a long stay, but now I had no reason to hesitate. After agreeing with the department head, I broke the news to Charles and the in-laws. I'll be in Europe for about a month for work, so please take care of things here. A month? That's sudden. Oh, come on. As if a woman like you would have a job that takes her overseas. You're probably lying. Exactly. Always exaggerating. Can't even take care of her husband, but going on an overseas business trip? Ridiculous. Well, maybe with Ella's job it's possible. What? You believe that woman over us? Your family? Yeah, you're being walked all over by your wife. So you hear that, Ella? Mom and they're right. Are you going to trample on their feelings just to show off going abroad? Of course I'm going. It's my job. Did you hear that? Then don't complain if you lose your place as Charles' wife when you return. Is that a threat? I'm sorry, but I won't be intimidated by such threats. Is that your true feeling? Got to know how shallow your love is. I silently returned upstairs to our living space and continued packing. Charles, who came home drunk, peeked at me but then retreated to his study. Michael was right. I paused packing and sent a message to Michael and my father-in-law. A month later, the business trip, both long and brief, was over, and I was due to return to America the next night. I called my mother-in-law. Hello, Layla? I'm coming back to America on tomorrow's flight. Oh, a call from the soon-to-be ex-wife. Ex-wife? Oh dear, slow, aren't you? Didn't I tell you before leaving not to expect to return as Charles' wife? Your unemployment days are over. So Charles decided to divorce me. Of course. Right after you left, we had a family meeting and decided on the divorce. The papers are already filed. Already filed. I see. Yes. And we decided that Charles and Aurora will live in your shared living space and all your belongings have been moved out. Michael's junior from university is in storage business, so we just threw everything there. You should be grateful we didn't just throw them away. So there's no need for you to come back now. Since the bad relationship with you is over, we're taking the opportunity to completely remodel the house. It's under construction now. I see. What about the signature on the divorce papers? I don't recall signing them. I forged your handwriting. Understood. Please take care, and goodbye. Talking big, even now. That's right, don't ever show your face again. Ignoring their laughter, I ended the call. The next day, upon arriving at the airport, I met up with Michael and headed to a real estate agency recommended by my father-in-law. 2 weeks later, the new apartment I rented was compact, but a southeast corner unit with great sunlight and ventilation. It's a pet-friendly building, so many residents have pets, making it a friendly and comfortable place to live. While making coffee and feeling content with my decision, my phone kept receiving message notifications. Ignoring the constant phone calls for a while, but they didn't stop after 20, then 30 minutes. Annoyed, I answered. What is it now? How dare you manipulate Dad and Michael like that? Mother-in-law and sister-in-law were shouting loudly. As expected, it was quite noisy. What do you need, Layla? I don't want to hear your voice unless necessary, but why did the lawyer say don't come back to the house? Because we're divorcing? Explain yourself. It must be your doing. Isn't it better for you three to live in the apartment you temporarily rented during the renovation? So, Jacob's retirement plan is finally coming to fruition. Retirement plan? I didn't know about this. Why does my son's ex-wife know, but not me, his wife? That's absurd. That's it. You must be manipulating everything behind the scenes. No, it's not like that at all. If anything, my leaving the house just served as a catalyst for Jacob and Michael. That's all. A catalyst? What do you mean by that? I decided to explain slowly and chronologically to the two, who were completely infuriated. Regardless of my presence, father-in-law intended to divorce mother-in-law after retirement, and Michael planned to eventually cut ties, preparing secretly. The unexpected factor was when Charles and I decided to rebuild the in-laws' house into a duplex when we got married. Duplex houses are generally harder to sell than standard houses. Father-in-law was concerned about the complications in property division if he divorced mother-in-law while owning a duplex. So, to alleviate these concerns, he took a loan in his name for the entire property, including the separate unit, and accepted about half the market rate as rent from Charles. However, when he heard about the divorce, he thought, "Now I can sell the house without any worries," I explained. "What? Selling the house?" "Yes, the sale has already been arranged. The land was originally inherited by Jacob from his parents, so it's not subject to divorce property division. Only the building is." "Then I'll claim it in my share of the alimony." "That's something for your family to discuss. It has nothing to do with me." After hanging up, Charles sent me a flurry of messages within an hour. Realizing how alike father and son were, I was shocked at my lack of judgment in men. As the notifications kept coming, I replied reluctantly, "What do you need?" I was afraid you wouldn't respond. "Sorry, but I've been busy with moving since returning." "What do you need? Quickly." "You sound so cold, like we're strangers." "Well, the divorce papers are already filed, so technically we are strangers, right?" "Technically, yes, but what about sentiment?" "Sentiment?" Hard to believe coming from someone who crammed his wife's belongings into a storage room and declared divorce papers as soon as she returned. I apologize for that. I was overwhelmed by Mom and Aurora, but I promise if you give me another chance, I won't do it again." "A chance? For what?" "Of course, a chance for Ella and me to be happy together. Isn't it obvious?" "But I'm currently happy, having successfully seized the chance to get away from you and the in-laws' house, so no worries." "Ella, why do you have to be so harsh? We were a couple that pledged eternal love." "As far as that goes, it's a completely dark chapter in my life, and I'm fully committed to acting like it never happened. Besides, your motives for saying such things are pretty obvious." "Motives? That's not, I stopped Charles, who seemed ready to make excuses, and pointed out that until now, thanks to father-in-law's actions, we lived in a convenient location with cheap rent, sharing the living costs. Maintaining the same lifestyle on Charles's income alone would be nearly impossible. Defiantly, Charles responded, "I had no idea things like food, detergent, shampoo cost so much. My salary is gone as soon as it's deposited. Nothing left. And soon the spendthrift Layla and Aurora will move in, right?" It's inevitable that I'd end up drowned in debt with those two. Understand that and help me out. Hey, I could quit my job and become a house husband. We could move far away, just Ella and me. Why would I go to such lengths? No way. Since you contacted me, I might as well mention that you'll be hearing from my lawyer soon." "Lawyer? Why?" I explained my intention to claim alimony in the divorce. Of course, Charles could dispute it, but I had records of the harassment I'd received from mother-in-law and sister-in-law, and Charles's failure to address it as my husband. I told him I was prepared to submit these records as evidence and instructed him to communicate through the lawyers from now on. Eventually, I received a modest sum for alimony, but according to my lawyer, mother-in-law and sister-in-law quickly squandered their share of father-in-law's property distribution and targeted Charles next. Unable to bear it, Charles soon disappeared, leaving mother-in-law and sister-in-law financially stranded. They resorted to begging friends and family for money and even showed up at Michael's workplace. I managed to drive them away, but Ella's workplace is more accessible than a high school, so be careful, Michael warned. Through my lawyer, I warned, If they dare to come begging at my workplace, I'll consult the police about the forged divorce papers. Thankfully, I've had no visits from them since. I'm currently busy preparing for an overseas university appointment next year. However, perhaps it was a choice I could make precisely because I was unburdened and alone. There may be challenges ahead, but I intend to believe in my future potential and work hard.